How do you do? Fine. Fine. Fine, they said.
Mm-hmm. Not here yet.
But,
but people watching this later,
I'm sure they're thinking, we're doing fine. Well, we're a little early today. We are. Yeah, you continue to take.
Get one person. I'm still reading.
Take some notes now for
Sirach.
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 It's like that hot sauce you get at the
Sriracha.
Asian restaurants.
What we got going? We got some of our friends that are here to join us tonight. Excited about that. I'm glad that you're here. Go ahead and let us know who you are so that we can greet you appropriately. We will certainly try to not greet you inappropriately. There's Brent and Isla
like with
here.
a holy kiss? Is that appropriate or inappropriate?
It depends on the context,
okay.
I think, and whether you're being facetious or not. I think those are... that's a big question mark there for that kind of thing.
So I was talking to Abby Grace the other day,
yes.
and I came up with the best dad joke ever.
You remember that dad joke I told you the other day?
Tell your joke.
I'll save it.
Save it after mine, because yours is going to be better, because mine was like a spur-of-the-moment dad joke.
Okay, all right.
It's definitely more like cringeworthy than yours.
Oh, man. Okay, all right, lay it on me.
She was doing math, and Sheree was like, hey, you should go to tutoring for this math stuff. And everybody's just like, no. And I was like, you can do it, Abby Grace. And then later I was talking to her about tutoring, and I was like, if you do go to tutoring, you'll stop wondering about how to solve those math problems. Get it?
I didn't get it.
Tutoring and wondering one...
Oh.
Was it too deep for a dad joke?
No, I just wasn't hanging on the pronunciation of those things well enough.
I figured it was too hard.
I mean, it is. I'll say it's pretty
cringeworthy.
It's pretty terrible. That's a pretty terrible joke. All right, you guys ready for mine?
Like my joke. Yeah.
All right, you ready for my? This is a wonderful joke, and I would credit it to whoever saw it originally from on the old Twitter, but I don't remember who it was. So. Are you ready? Here you go. If somebody takes the Bible literally, that's stealing.
I like it.
Isn't that great?
Post your best dad jokes in the comments, and as we go
wondering. Yeah, there you go. Wondering. That's exactly right. That's it. Right. That's exactly right. Yes, they're on it.
Someone's conscious.
Conscious.
I don't know who that is. Hi, we're glad to have you.
Yeah, I would guess that's that's coming from the old Periscope from the Twitter land.
So. Not many people join us on Periscope.
Occasionally, on Sunday mornings a lot. But, yeah. Well, we're glad that you're here, Conscious. Welcome. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to talk about. Listen, after my dad joke, I think about 5 people hung up the phone. They were just like, we
dropped from 9 to 3.
We are out of here.
Like they're just
if
doing
they're going to be doing
jokes
those kinds of dad jokes, we are bouncing from here right now. Oh, it's Toppy! Hey, Chad. What's up, Choppy? Hope you're doing well today. Oh man, do you like that? Did you like that dad joke? Did you catch that one? That was a great dad joke. He would have really liked it.
He liked it.
So welcome.
I think he did an LOL. That was from your dad joke.
That was from him. That was
your dad joke.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well,
we did lose 6 people all of a sudden.
Well, they'll come back.
Okay.
They always come back, Rylan. That's not true.
Yeah.
But anyway. Okay, so we're glad that you're here. Let's see. It is 6:30, so we are legit ready to open and start today. I would tell you that if you're Cedarling folks, there's Dave and Celia. If you're Cedarling folks, you need to make sure that you check out the emails that we sent from the office today, because there's some prayer requests in there, and I want you to be able to look and take care of those. There are several of them that were...
we got a lot of things going on.
Yeah, a lot of people have things going on. So please look at those and pay attention to those. And whether you're from there or not, you are hopefully in for something that will be kind of fun today and expose you to something interesting and different. So tonight, we're on like kind of a little mini-series, and we are studying some of the books of the Apocrypha. Okay, or what are sometimes referred to as the deuterocanonical books. That's kind of hard to say. That's a lot of syllables at once. The deuterocanonical books, and or second canon books, or oh man, I wish I could remember the Anaginoska. That's the Greek Orthodox name for it. Which so there's several names for this set of books, but they're these books that are typically part of the Septuagint, and which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures. Okay, and they were written sometime between most of our Old Testament books and the New Testament, and often they are books that had a very significant impact on the culture, including the religious culture into which Jesus was born, in which he worked, which the apostles grew up in. And occasionally we see that influence kind of shining through. And they shaped the world. They shaped the way that people thought about the world, about the way that people thought about what was important and not. Okay, and so we've been kind of looking at this set of books. We talked about the book of Tobit, and we looked at the book of Maccabees, which is like this historical. Tobit is kind of a story; it's a narrative. The Maccabees books are kind of fill in some of our history gaps. Okay, between some of what you would read in like Kings and Chronicles, and Nehemiah, Ezra, Esther, up until what you see in the New Testament, right? Because that's the Maccabee stuff that we looked at. I want to say that the books that we're going to do today, the Wisdom of Solomon, and Sirach, or sometimes it's called Ecclesiasticus, okay, but Sirach and the Wisdom of Solomon. Sometimes you'll just see Wisdom of Solomon called just Wisdom. Like if you just look up the Book of Wisdom, like you'll probably find something there. It makes these books have different names. It kind of makes them hard to look up sometimes, but you can find some material about them. Anyway, these books, the Wisdom of Solomon and Sirach, are wisdom books. They're wisdom literature, or what we call sapiential books. Okay.
Wait, what?
Sapiential, like sapiens is
sapiens
wisdom. Okay.
Okay.
All right, and these are books of wisdom. Okay. And they fall into the same. Of course, the Old Testament the Hebrew Bible has other wisdom literature that's available to us. And some of those books. Tell us what some of the books are that are part of that corpus. Or you want to go? Or you want to?
Wisdom?
We can wait 30 seconds for the folks at home.
I'll start us out.
Okay, tell us. What are some of the wisdom books there?
We got Proverbs. That's the easy one.
Yeah. Proverbs is the easiest of them. But you also have a very different book than Proverbs would be the book of Job, right? Okay, so Proverbs structurally is like, it has a section talking about wisdom generally. It's poetic, okay? And then we have this kind of rapid fire, proverb. And we have, 16 chapters of those kinds of things that kind of just hit over and over and over again. And then you have a very different book would be the book of Job, which is like a long poetic book about a person. It kind of gives a narrative, and then from that narrative, like spills all this poetry, exploring his situation, right, and trying to think about it in terms.
And so we studied those two books. I don't know,
about a year ago. About a year ago.
1 year ago.
Yeah.
I think Sunday morning class.
Yeah, we had it in our Sunday morning classes at Cedar Lane. Yeah. So we've spent some time studying those things, and then it changed our
something has changed. Yeah, we're tired.
My news app keeps wanting to open. I'm tired of the news.
Want news?
Want more news? So those two would be a couple of the books. You have the book of Ecclesiastes would be thrown in there. Okay.
What about Lamentations?
No, Lamentations is typically a prophetic book. It's kind of just an epilogue to Jeremiah, if you want to think of it that way. Or we think about it as a book of poetry. Okay, so sometimes, I don't know how you learned your Old Testament books, but there are a couple different definitions.
Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers.
That's not what I meant. Like the groupings. You probably grew up, if you grew up going to a church like mine, there was like a poster on the wall that was like a bookshelf.
Yeah.
And it had like groupings of the books. It would say
the law,
the books of the law. Yeah. And historical books, minor prophets, major prophets. And then sometimes it had a category called poetry. Okay. And like these books were kind of thrown in there, but wisdom is kind of a different category. Now, all these things are just categories that we put onto the text. They don't really belong to it.
Right.
So like one of the things is you read a book and you have to kind of decide like what genre it is that you're reading.
But it's not just us. I mean, people have put them in categories for thousands of years.
Sure,
right?
sure, yeah. So, but like we mentioned a few weeks ago, like the Jewish categories, the classical Jewish categories, are represented by an acronym called the Tanakh, right? Mm-hmm. The Torah, the Naviim, and the Ketuvim, right? Or the law and the prophets and the writings. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's like. Talk about a generic category. Yeah. The writings is pretty generic, right?
Is that a thing in the New Testament? Somebody say like the law and the prophets are things that someone says. So
yeah, sure, yeah.
When
often,
they say that,
often,
are they talking about those books?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
They're just throwing out the writings.
That's right. They're talking about those categories. And actually, I think the writings actually shows up at least one time.
Cool.
I think.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. I'd have to look that up, but I think that's correct. Yeah. So let's kind of dive into these books a little bit. So when we talk about Sirach and we talk about the Wisdom of Solomon, we're kind of talking about books that are like Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon, okay, and Job. They're kind of all in this group, okay. And some of the Psalms, like Psalms, kind of defies it because it's got a lot of everything, right?
Yeah.
But some of the Psalms are kind of wisdom Psalms too. Like Psalm 1 is kind of a wisdom psalm that kind of shows this is what happens to wise people and this is what happens to people that are unwise or scoffers or whatever. And when we talk about these two books, we're kind of in that great tradition. I'll say this before we get going. Of all the books that we're going to talk about, these are the most accessible. Okay? Tobit, we talked about how you can kind of read it in, it's a longer setting, but you can read it in a longer sitting. You could read it in, probably a couple hours and be done with it. These books are longer, okay? But you can jump in and read just a chapter of them and walk away feeling like you were edified. I mean, I think, okay? Because the poetry, this poetry just sings. In my reading of it.
Well, we were talking about this before. You could take a chapter of it and put it into Proverbs and probably no one would notice.
Yes, we're going to talk about that in just a minute because you're right, especially Sirach. I mean, you could take out some of those chapters and like or some, not even chapters, you could slip in verses and people would be like, oh. If you put like a Jeopardy board, in honor of Trebek, it's here's this is a verse, is the proper answer.
Yeah.
Or proper questions, the way they give you the answer and you ask
what is the book of Sirach.
Right. Yeah, then you would have a hard time putting them in the right kind of categories, I think. But that being said, let's start with the Book of Wisdom, okay? The Wisdom of Solomon. And it is, let's see, I'm going to say it's like 20-something chapters long. Maybe a little longer than that. No, that's about right. And it is structured very much poetically. In fact, you remember how at the beginning of the book of Proverbs, you have these like the first 8 chapters or so, you get into this like long section of like, it's like a poem about wisdom. It describes like Lady Wisdom coming down, okay? I think of it like this. Like, it's not necessarily the same kind of proverb like advice, ethical advice after ethical advice, blah, blah, on. But instead, we get this longer section commending wisdom. The Wisdom of Solomon commends wisdom to us. It invites us to pursue wisdom. That's what it wants us to do. All right? And so I want to read a section of it that I think is pretty representative, okay? But if you wanted to think about it, kind of like a long ode to wisdom. Okay. I think that would be a way of thinking about it.
So this, just for context, Wisdom of Solomon, probably not written by Solomon, right?
No.
This is something that we think someone wrote as like a pseudonym, kind of, like where they were like, this is the kind of stuff Solomon would have said.
Yeah. In fact, I don't even know. I'm trying to think if it even attributes itself to Solomon's beginning. I don't think it does. Part of chapter 9 jumps off of some of the material about Solomon before. Okay, but this is something that's kind of riffing off the tradition, I think. Yeah. and I do think it's kind of written as a posture. Yeah, no, I totally take that back. Okay, it is written from the posture of Solomon. Okay, because it's kind of going to, you'll hear in the poetry, he's going to talk about his decision as a king to like ask for wisdom, and it was given to him, and all this kind of stuff. Okay. So that being said, let's kind of read through some of this, and I think this is really wonderful. I think it's a really, really wonderful section. Okay, we're going to start in the Book of Wisdom, chapter 6. We're going to read into chapter 7, and maybe even just a few verses of chapter 8. Okay, and so it's a little longer, but I think you'll hear. I hope you'll hear what I love about this stuff, because it's so poetic. Let's just read it, and then let's talk about some of the value I think we can get from this. Okay, and then we'll kind of come back from that a little bit. All right, so Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6. We can go back. We'll read a chapter at a time. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
Listen, therefore, O kings, and understand. Learn, O judges of the ends of the earth. Give ear, you that rule over multitudes and boast of many nations. For your dominion was given you from the Lord, and your sovereignty from the Most High. He will search out your works and inquire into your plans. Because as servants of his kingdom, you did not rule rightly, or keep the law, or walk according to the purpose of God. He will come upon you terribly and swiftly, because severe judgment falls on those in high places. For the lowliest may be pardoned in mercy, but the mighty will be mightily tested. For the Lord of all will not stand in awe of anyone, or show deference to greatness, because he himself made both small and great, and he takes thought for all alike. But a strict inquiry is in store for the mighty. To you then, O monarchs, my words are directed, so that you may learn wisdom and not transgress. For they will be made holy who observe holy things in holiness, and those who have been taught them will find a defense. Therefore set your desire on my words, long for them, and you will be instructed. Wisdom is radiant and unfading, and she is easily discerned by those who love her, and is found by those who seek her. She hastens to make herself known to those who desire her. One who rises early to seek her will have no difficulty, for she will be found sitting at the gate. To fix one's thought on her is perfect understanding, and one who is vigilant on her account will soon be free from care, because she goes about seeking those worthy of her, and she graciously appears to them in their paths, and meets them in every thought. The beginning of wisdom is the most sincere desire for instruction, and concern for instruction is love of her. And love of her is the keeping of her laws, and giving heed to her laws, and assurance of immortality. And immortality brings one near to God, so that the desire for wisdom leads to a kingdom. Therefore, if you delight in thrones and scepters, O monarchs over the peoples, honor wisdom, so that you may reign forever. I will tell you what wisdom is and how she came to be, and I will hide no secrets from you, but I will trace her course from the beginning of creation and make knowledge of her clear. And I will not pass by the truth, nor will I travel in the company of sickly envy, for envy does not associate with wisdom. The multitude of the wise is the salvation of the world, and a sensible king is the stability of any people. Therefore, be instructed by my words, and you will profit. I'm telling you, it sings, doesn't it? Yeah. Go ahead and read some of chapter 7.
Chapter 7. I also am mortal.
Wait, hold on a second. Go on. Just meander by. Kelly is trapped in the garage, needs to go in there, so nobody will notice her right now. We're definitely not going to call it.
Look away.
All right, chapter 7. Here we go.
Chapter 7. I also am mortal like everyone else, a descendant of the first formed child of earth, and in the womb of a mother I was molded into flesh within the period of 10 months, compacted with blood from the seed of a man and the pleasure of marriage. And when I was born, I began to breathe the common air and fell upon the kindred earth, and my first sound was a cry, as is true of all. I was nursed with care in swaddling cloths. For no king has had a different beginning of existence. There is for all one entrance into life and one way out. Therefore I prayed, and understanding was given me. I called on God, and the spirit of wisdom came to me. I preferred her to scepters and thrones, and I counted wealth as nothing in comparison with her. Neither did I liken to her any priceless gem, because all gold is but a little sand in her sight, and silver will be accounted as clay before her. I loved her more than health and beauty, and I chose to have her rather than light, because her radiance never ceases. All good things came to me along with her, and in her hands unaccounted wealth. I rejoiced in them all, because wisdom leads them. But I did not know that she was their mother. I learned without guile, and I impart without grudging. I do not hide her wealth, for it is an unfailing treasure for mortals. Those who get it obtain friendship with God, commended for the gifts that come from instruction. May God grant me to speak with judgment, and to have thoughts worthy of what I have received. For he is the guide even of wisdom, and the corrector of the wise. For both we and our words are in his hand, and as are all understanding and skill and crafts. For it is he who gave me unerring knowledge of what exists, to know the structure of the world and the activity of the elements, the beginning and the end and middle of times, the alternations of the solstices and the changes of the seasons, the cycles of the year and the constellations of the stars, the natures of animals and the tempers of wild animals, the powers of spirits and the thoughts of human beings, the variety of plants and the virtues of roots. I learned both what is secret and what is manifest. For wisdom, the fashioner of all things, taught me. There is in her a spirit that is intelligent, holy, unique, manifold, subtle, mobile, clear, unpolluted, distinct, invulnerable, loving the good, keen, irresistible, beneficent, humane, steadfast, sure, free from anxiety, all-powerful, overseeing all, and penetrating through all spirits that are intelligent, pure, and altogether subtle. For wisdom is more mobile than any motion. Because of her pureness, she pervades and penetrates all things, for she is a breath of the power of God, and a pure emanation of the glory of the Almighty. Therefore nothing defiled gains entrance into her. For she is a reflection of eternal light, a spotless mirror of the working of God, and an image of his goodness. Although she is but one, she can do all things, and while remaining in herself, she renews all things. In every generation she passes into holy souls, and makes them friends of God and prophets. For God loves nothing so much as the person who lives with wisdom. She is more beautiful than the sun, and excels every constellation of the stars. Compared with the light, she is found to be superior, for it is succeeded by the night, but against wisdom evil does not prevail.
Just a few more verses here. She reaches mightily from one end of the earth to the other, and she orders all things well. I loved her and sought her from my youth. I desired to take her for my bride, and became enamored of her beauty. She glorifies her noble birth by living with God, and the Lord of all loves her. For she is an initiate in the knowledge of God, and an associate in his works. If riches are a desirable possession in life, what is richer than wisdom, the active cause of all things? And if understanding is effective, who more than she is fashioner of what exists? And if anyone loves righteousness, her labors are virtues, for she teaches self-control and prudence, justice and courage. Nothing in life is more profitable for mortals than these. And if anyone longs for wide experience, she knows the things of old and infers the things to come. She understands turns of speech and the solution of riddles. She has foreknowledge of signs and wonders and the outcome of seasons and times. Therefore, I determined to take her to live with me, knowing that she would give me good counsel and encouragement in cares and grief. Because of her, I shall have glory among the multitudes and honor in the presence of the elders. Though I am young, I shall be found keen in judgment, and in the sight of all rulers I shall be admired. When I am silent, they will wait for me. And when I speak, they will give heed. If I speak at greater length, they will put their hands on their mouths. Okay, we'll just let that be for now, because it goes on for many more chapters. Yeah. Okay, and but you can certainly get a taste of it. And I got to tell you, I really do. The poetry sings to me. I think this poetic work, and it's and if you think about this, I think this is let's talk about the way you can kind of receive this. Okay. Mm-hmm. It is a poem to the virtue of wisdom. And it points us to, as people that respect and honor wisdom, it points us to that wisdom comes from God, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the source of it. Like it all comes, originates in God. And it's useful to us and it's valuable and it's something to be pursued more than anything else. Like I think that's pretty good, right? Yeah. I think that's a pretty significant thing to honor. And there's several parts of this that I noticed. What did you?
Yeah, I noticed that it said that you should go to find her. She'll be sitting at the gate, and that made me think of something.
Yeah.
all of the elders of the town would go sit at the gate.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the way you get wisdom is to go listen to them.
Yes.
Is that what it's saying?
That's right. Well, and also like it's also playing off of Proverbs, because like Proverbs also does this thing where it personifies wisdom, and wisdom is found at the gate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there. So yes, that's part of it too. But also notice that wisdom is something to like. That's in that section, I think, in chapter 7, maybe.
It's in 7. It's at the
6 or 7, yeah.
Here somewhere. I don't know. I think it was in 7.
No, it's in 6. It's 6.
Into
yeah,
6?
and it's in
Okay.
this section where they're talking about it says wisdom is radiant and unfading. She is easily discerned by those who love her, and it is found by those who seek her, right? She desires to make herself known to those who desire her, or one who rises early to seek her will have no understanding. She'll be found sitting at the gate. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that poetry, what's that poetry doing, right? Like anytime we work on a text, we're talking about something in the Bible or something different, something else, asking not just what does the text say or what does it mean, but what is the text doing? What is it trying to do? What's the function of that text? This text is trying to drive us towards pursuing wisdom, right? And I think that's encouraging, right? I think if we think of this, if you kind of take this from our position, maybe not elevating it to Scripture, but if you kind of read it as like an ancient sermon on wisdom, on the value of wisdom, I think that's pretty encouraging, right? And I think that's a good way to read it. Wisdom comes from outside. It has to be sought. I also like that part of chapter 7 where it talks about, look, when I was born, remember writing from like Solomon's perspective, he says, look, when I was born, I came out of my mom and I fell on the ground and I started crying like everybody else. I did the same things that everybody else does, because a king is born the same way as a peasant, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the point. Like you're born. There's only one way in, and then he says there's one way out. Mm-hmm. You're born. We're born. We all are born, and we all die. And that whatever happens between may look different for a lot of different people. But like those things, there's one way in and one way out. I thought that's pretty good poetry, though, isn't it? The way it's written. And that's what he wants to say is like, hey, we're all in the same. We come from a level playing field in terms of like whether we have wisdom or not at birth. What happens then, though, is do we seek the wisdom that then comes from God and is infused into us and like changes the way we live? Like, and he's encouraging people to do that. Right? He's saying the wisdom I have isn't because I was born. I had like a high IQ and I was just really smart. I was born just like everybody else, but I came to desire and pursue wisdom, right? And that's what makes me wise. Which is an interesting thing, right? Like conceptually that wisdom is something that comes from outside you, and you have to pursue it, but it also comes as a gift from God too. Yeah, right. Both those things are true.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the hard part of this is like picking out the bits that tell you how to actually do it, because there's a lot about just how great it is, right? Mm-hmm. But then peppered in there are like little hints on how to achieve wisdom, because you can't just wake up early and say, all right, I woke up early, I'm getting wisdom now.
Yeah, but you have to. But it does start. It starts with like desire.
Yes.
Like you desire wisdom, right? Which I was telling you earlier that that like this book kind of reminds me a lot of some of the stuff that we just read reminds me of some of the things that James has to say about wisdom. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think. And I've read some articles before that made me think that like James and Sirach, or James and wisdom, there's a lot of connections here. Okay, and let's see here. If any of you lacks wisdom, ask God, who gives to all generously and ungrudgingly, and it'll be given to you. But ask in faith, never doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea. And it kind of gives us some more imagery.
That's from Sirach, right?
Yeah, there's some of that imagery. Yeah. But then also this stuff that talks about how let's see here. It talks about that you're asking for this great gift, right? Well, how about this little text? Every generous act of giving with every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there's no variation. So, like the gifts, remember how it talked about like God is the one who gives good things, right? But then it says this, right? In fulfillment of His own purpose, He gave us birth by the word of truth, so that we would become a kind of first fruit of His creatures. Like I think it's kind of riffing off of that birth narrative a little bit, right? Like
with wisdom kind of intertwined there.
Right. Yeah. So there's those kind of things that are like kind of, I think, kind of echoes in some of that stuff. All right, but also too, like, you remember that part about that kind of listed off all those? It's like it like had like 15 different attributes of like what wisdom looks like, and then it says like. And envy doesn't have any part of wisdom, right?
Yeah,
like
when I was reading that, I was like, this reads a lot like one of Paul's lists.
Listen to this, right? This is in James chapter 3, okay, verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness born of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly and unspiritual and devilish. For where there's envy and selfish ambition, there will be disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom that from above is first pure and peaceable and gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality and hypocrisy. Like that sounds very. That really sounds like it has a lot of echoes to some of that stuff, right? Like there's the way of. There's a kind of wisdom that is envious and ambitious for itself. You don't want to have anything to do with wisdom. That. Yeah. Like the real true wisdom is peaceable and gentle and humble. This like portrays this kind of differing visions of what wisdom can be, and I think that's very valuable. And I think what happens is that all that wisdom literature of the Old Testament. And then we don't really have this kind of a character in our world, although maybe we're starting to have a character like this again with the Advent. This may be like one of the things that people are trying to do in the social media world is taking on the nature of like a sage. Okay, like a sage, like a wise person is somebody that is. Somebody that sits on the mountain and like decrees, or you come to them with your problem.
Go to them and
they give you some, like, there is this like sage or sagacity, tradition of sagacity, and somebody who possesses wisdom and is using it to teach other people. There's that part of the Sirach, I think it's 7. I think it's the part that you read where he's like, I'm not stingy with the wisdom that I have. People come to me and ask for it, I give it to them. I share it greatly. Yeah. It's a form of riches that I just hand out whenever I want.
Right. Yeah.
It's like taking this nature of a sage, and that's a role. We talk about the roles that Jesus plays. Okay, and Jesus plays a role. We talk about like a prophet or a rabbi, a king or a priest. Like these are kind of roles. But I think there's also a tradition of Jesus as a sage that needs to be honored. That Jesus is like a wise person. And he's the kind of person that people who sought wisdom, not just commentary on the law, but like they sought wisdom, they would come to him, right? And he would tell a parable as a way of like offering them a perspective, like a wisdom perspective.
So what? I mean, do we need sages? We have Google now, Stephen.
Yes, we still need sages. You may have
heard of it. Yeah. What do we need a sage for if we have Google?
Well, Google gives you the information, right? But how you live in the faith, like what you do with your life, not the how to fix your radiator, or whatever. I mean, if I'm going to solve something, I'm going to like Google the problem and watch a YouTube video and figure it out. But when I'm thinking about like how to wrestle when I'm in between two groups of people that are being contentious with each other, you can't just Google what to do about that, right? When I'm trying to wrestle with how I deal with the presence of grief in my life, in trying to live joyfully in the face of that, right? I
almost feel like you could Google some of that stuff, but it would be like a deep dive into a lot of different texts and things, which would pretty much be like going to a sage.
Or finding a sage.
Like it's not like a simple, like quick search question answer thing.
Right, and I think there is this thing like where in social media places, like some people are trying to sit in the position of a sage by like issuing like an edict. A tweet or a Facebook post that reflects something that you can kind of sages do that. They don't go on and on for hours. They issue something that in its brevity you have to kind of dwell on and reflect. That's what that's how Jesus teaches, right? He gives people these things that need to be gone, and you got to chew on them a little bit.
And if he went on forever, you'd have so many of them you wouldn't remember any of them, and you couldn't chew on them because they'd be.
Instead, he says, the last shall be first. But, it's all
he tells a parable.
Yeah, right.
That you can remember and think about when you get home.
Right.
It's a story.
And maybe both those things. Like he tells a parable that has some kind of like pithy thing at the end, that you hold on to. And you kind of you're meant to mull it over and kind of reflect on it, more and more. At any rate, that tradition of the sage, of the wisdom person, I think is part of what these books are just a little upstream of Jesus and all that. Right?
So in the show notes, are you going to put like the Twitter handles of all the sages that you follow?
Not at all. Not at all.
You're not going to make it easy for us?
No, you got to find your own sages, people.
All
you got to do the work. Do the work. Okay. All right. So that's summary. In summary, the Wisdom of Solomon is a book that's meant to drive you towards wisdom. Yeah. Okay. Sirach's a little bit different. Sirach's very different in that it is trying to give you very much like the book of Proverbs. Yeah. Kind of help you sample some of that wisdom in like a topical, ethical sort of way, and let you kind of run with it, a little bit. So you took...
I looked over Sirach real fast, right? Like for 10 minutes before we started. Yeah. And I wrote down some stuff that was interesting, and it's mostly out of like the first 8 chapters. I got some more stuff a little bit later on that we might touch on. Yeah. Just to read because it's interesting, okay? But what I noticed that Sirach seems to do, that's a pattern, is it will give you like a chunk that's like, hey, this is almost like an expounding of a commandment or of some old Pentateuch law kind of idea, like helping the poor or honoring your father and mother, something like that. And then an essay about wisdom, kind of like what you get in Solomon. And then another chunk of like, hey, this is how you're kind of orphans and stuff. And then another chunk about wisdom. And it seems sporadic, but I think it's just going back and forth between those
and the topic,
ideas, right?
And like Proverbs seems sporadic, it seems like there's different topic every 3 verses.
Writing them down.
Yeah. There's a lot of this kind of stuff. So all right, so I want to read a couple, and then you can kind of pick up this. Okay, so how about this? Happy are those, and just tell me that this doesn't sound like something from Proverbs, right? Happy are those who do not blunder with their lips, and need not suffer remorse for sin. Happy are those whose hearts do not condemn them, and for those who have not given up hope. Okay. How about
1731 or 2018? One of those is very much like that. What you just read.
Okay. All right.
That has a great one-liner in there. Let's see if it's
1731. Okay.
Nope, it's 2018. Sorry.
How did you get those two things mixed up?
I wrote them both down, and I knew it was one or the other.
Okay, I was like, they're not similar numbers.
No, that one right there.
Oh, okay. A slip on the pavement is better than a slip of the tongue. The downfall of the wicked will occur just as speedily. That is great. Or the one right after it.
Yeah.
A coarse person is like an inappropriate story continually on the lips of the ignorant.
I'm glad it said inappropriate story and not dad joke.
Yeah. Or listen to this one. A proverb from a fool's lips will be rejected, for he does not tell it at the proper time. So, wisdom has an appropriateness to it, right? And you can have something that's a wise proverb, but you use it in the wrong circumstance, and it's really, people are like, you're the idiot.
Yeah.
That doesn't actually offer. Yeah. Question a friend. Perhaps he did not do it. Or if he did, so that he may not do it again. Question a neighbor. Perhaps he did not say it. Or if he said it, so that he may not repeat it. Question a friend. For often it is slander. In other words, maybe they didn't do the thing that you heard about. Go and ask him. Hey, did you really say this? Yeah. So do not believe everything that you hear. And then it says, a person may make a slip without intending it. Who has not sinned with his tongue? Question your neighbor before you threaten him, and let the law of the Most High take its course. Boy, it's pretty good.
Really good.
Yeah.
That's hard to do, though. It's so much easier to just get angry. bash someone.
Right.
Right?
Really lash out, right? Being really wise. All right, so let me see. I had another one here just a second ago, but I lost it. But
sorry.
How about this? An enemy who pities a snake charmer when he is bitten, or all those who go near wild animals. So no one pities a person who associates with a sinner and becomes involved in the other's sins. He stands by you for a while, but if you falter, he will not be there. An enemy speaks sweetly with his lips, but in his heart he plans to throw you into a pit. An enemy may have tears in his eyes, but if he finds an opportunity, he will never have enough of your blood. If evil comes upon you, or you will find him there ahead of you, pretending to help, but he will trip you up. And then he will shake his head and clap his hands and whisper much and show his true face. That's crazy, huh?
Yeah. I like the who pities the snake charmer when he is bitten.
Yeah.
Or all those. It reminds me of like watching a show like Breaking Bad or
Tiger
King. Like Tiger King. Oh man, Tiger King.
No, it's not different. You're saying like a show that's
but
like
that has like an anti-hero that's doing all these bad things, and you're just like, you almost don't like the main character, and then when something bad happens, you're like, well, you totally deserved that. Right, that's exactly. So there's wisdom in it. Yeah,
no, that's really that's right. Yeah, you can see it kind of coming. The train's like coming before Okay, all right. So this is the kind of thing that, and I would say some of these are maybe even a little edgier than some of the things we have in Proverbs. So let's listen to some of these, right? But they're just like they're kind of really crazy, super practical. Do not contend with the powerful, or you may fall into their hands. Do not quarrel with the rich in case their resources outweigh yours. For gold has ruined many and has perverted the minds of kings. Like, don't start a fight that you're not going to be able to win. Mm-hmm. Right? Like that's
even if you're right.
Yeah, you may be right, but do not argue with the loud of mouth and do not heap wood on their fire.
Yeah.
Like there's somebody with a loud mouth that's a fool. You don't start, if you start arguing with them, it's just like taking wood and throwing it onto their fire. Right? Mm-hmm. Do not make fun of one who is ill-bred. So like don't start making fun of somebody that doesn't know restraint of manners.
Okay.
Right?
Ill-bred. That's what ill-bred means.
Well, I think somebody that's ill repute, right? Yeah. Or your ancestors may be insulted. Like you start that fight and you got to wait for that because they're going to throw out your mama joke. And they're going to take it too far, right? They're going to say something that may not be true, but do not reproach one who is turning away from sin. Remember that we all deserve punishment. So somebody's already repenting. You don't have to kind of pile onto them, right? Yeah. And then this one: do not disdain one who is old, for some of us are also growing old. The reminder: don't make fun of the old folks because
you're gonna be one.
You're on your way to that. Like ideally, that's gonna happen too. So these are. Yeah, the next one's kind of like that too. Do not rejoice over anyone's death. Remember that we must all die, right? Mm-hmm. So all this is kind of the stuff that keeps. It just kind of keeps piling on one after the other. Okay, so you get chapter after chapter of this kind of stuff, and I think some of them are really. What's this one?
This is one that I like because it reminded me of when it says, "Be kind to those who persecute you, because in so doing you will heap coals on their heads." Right. This one says, "Do not kindle the coals of sinners, or you may be burned in their flaming fire." Yeah. So that do not let the insolent bring you to your feet. They may lie in ambush against your work. So like, that's kind of the opposite idea. Like if you're kind to them, you'll heap the coals on them is what Jesus says that, right?
Yeah, you're right.
But if you flame the coals, then they're going to come back on you.
Yeah, yeah. There was something else that I remember earlier that seems like very much. Oh man, I wish I could. I just, obviously these are not texts that I know nearly as well as I do some of the biblical ones, but like they're. Every time I come to them, I find to me what they strike me as like a tradition that. That is kind of riffing off of a lot of, like if you think about like the tradition of the Proverbs and what it would be like if a community like really lived on those and then kind of like contributed their own and like added to them. This is the kind of thing that you would come up with, right? And it kind of makes me wonder, like, what it would be like for us to like compile for our community, like something like this, right? And just have what if we just had like a book of the wisdom of Cedar Lane?
That would be great.
And we'd have to have a good editor, okay? Yeah. but something that just kind of like we keep on.
Yeah, I mean,
kept adding to generationally, I think that'd be kind of fun. Yeah.
You lose some stuff in like modern times, right? So like this wisdom, it applies to a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that just isn't talked about in the Bible. And something like that, I mean, I guess that's what you get. Yeah. With I don't know, with the sages you were talking about, right? That's some of that stuff, but. Even in specific places like Cedar Lane, we may have some wisdom that doesn't apply everywhere else. Yeah.
How about this, right? Do not praise the wisdom of the humble lifts their heads high and seats them among the great. Do not praise individuals for their good looks or loathe anyone because of appearance alone. The bee is small among flying creatures, but what it produces is the best of sweet things. I love that. Yeah, it's like, right? Just don't like have some humility in the way that you.
There was one 4, 20, and 21.
4, 20, and 21.
I really liked. It spoke to me.
Okay, let me see it. 4, 20, and 21.
Let's see what your version says. I think it's about the same as mine.
Okay. Watch for the opportune time and beware of evil, and do not be ashamed to be yourself. For there is a shame that leads to sin, and there's a shame that is glory and favor. Wow, that's interesting.
We're in a culture right now, I think, that any shame is like negative. Like you should never feel shame about anything.
Yeah.
And thinking of that and then reading this kind of verse, it's like, you know what? There is a shame that leads to sin and that you shouldn't dwell on and have. But there's also a shame that is glory and favor. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that one was a really great.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There are
and
parts
be yourself. That's a very American kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Don't be ashamed to be yourself.
There is some like stuff that would be in the justice tradition of the Jews as well. Like so, I wouldn't want to like leave those things out here. My child, do not cheat the poor of their living. Do not keep needy eyes waiting. Do not grieve the hungry or anger one in need. Do not add to the troubles of the desperate or delay giving to the needy. Do not reject a suppliant. Suppliant? No. Suppliant.
I've never heard that word.
Suppliant. I think, yeah. In distress, or turn your face away from the poor. Do not avert your eyes from the needy, and give no one reason to curse you. For in bitterness of soul, some should curse you. Their Creator will hear their prayer. Wow, isn't that something?
That's good, and that's what I'm talking about. So, and it seems to be a lot like at the beginning of chapters. Yeah, you'll get like a beginning of chapter 3 is, hey, be good to your parents.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then there's a little bit like a little essay on wisdom. And the beginning of chapter 4 is, hey, be good to poor people, and like the social justice kind of stuff. Yeah. And then there's a little thing about wisdom. And then the next chapter is I can't remember, but it's kind of split up that way. It's really cool.
Yeah. And it does kind of like you'll get 7 or 8 verses that are kind of in the same category. About humility or about
there's
whatever.
a lot of stuff about being humble,
parent or about children or whatever. And I'll tell you what, I can't commend these 2 books enough. I just think I really think they're so good. Okay, and it is one thing for us to have an argument about whether or not they're scripture or not, right? Yeah. But what I do know about the wisdom tradition in the Bible, okay, and like the Old Testament proper, like the book of Proverbs. Proverbs has a lot to say about somebody that can't hear wisdom. Right? Like, and what is it? What do you call a person who is hearing wise things being said and who sticks their fingers in their ears? And does
foolish.
They're a fool. Right.
Person.
Right. A fool can't hear wisdom. Yeah. We should be prepared to hear wisdom. Mm-hmm. When it comes from trusted sources, even if that source isn't like the proper Bible, right? And to
we
me,
do that all the time.
Yeah. Oh, you have to. That's like what
you
and that's
preach
what
on
Proverbs
Sunday,
is saying.
and we listen to you.
Well,
that's
more or less.
One way, right? I mean, that's a little way.
Yeah.
But it's a real thing,
well,
right?
and we regard people. I mean, that's what Proverbs is saying. It's not like only listen to the pages of this book, right? Like you do, you do pay special attention to the Torah and to the law and to the instruction that comes from God. But when we have a wise person in the community of faith, we listen to them. I think it's worth saying that this is such a wise person. Okay, I think you still have to weigh it.
Sure.
You properly weigh what's going on, mull them over, and there may be things that you hear and you're like,
Yeah, I remember reading through these before and having a few verses where I was like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, you're like, okay, that one's good, that one's good, that one's good. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
And actually, I think those are worth like mulling over maybe a little bit more, because it may be that you find a way towards something, but at the same time, we're not bound to these in the same way.
Sure.
And so trying to like, weigh through them and ask where they teach us, I think it's very useful, So I would commend these books to you. I really and truly, of all the books of the Apocrypha, and I know your guys' reading list is kind of backing up, okay? I think these are the most easily accessible. Mm-hmm. I think you can look up Sirach, Sirach, and you can call that up, whether it's in the Bible app or it's something on the web, PDF version or something like that. Or you find a Bible that has it in it. These big old Oxford annotated Bibles, you can find them. But there's lots of things that I think you could look it up and you could read a couple of chapters. And I don't know that I've ever read them and been like, that was garbage. Like every time I read it, I'm like, oh, these are so good. I wish everybody knew that this stuff was here. It's hiding in plain sight, right? Yeah. I mean, we all know that these books exist. We don't really know enough about what they are. So, well, I think they're really good. Look at this. Look at these right here, right? Whoever touches pitch gets dirty, and whoever associates with a proud person becomes like him. Mm-hmm. Man, what a great proverb, right? Yeah. Like you can't touch tar without getting some on you, and hanging out with an arrogant person is like touching tar.
Yeah. Could you take out proud and just put almost any word in
any
there?
Vice?
Yeah, or even any virtue.
Maybe so. Yeah, that's a great thing to consider. Yeah. Do not lift a weight too heavy for you, or associate with one mightier and richer than you.
Have you ever lifted a weight that was too heavy? Like been at the gym, and it's not a fun place to be.
All the time.
It's not a fun place to be, especially like with a bench press and you have everyone spotting you.
Yeah, and
you're like, I'm in trouble.
Man, listen to this. Listen to this. How can the clay pot? This is kind of in that same thing. Like, don't hang out with somebody that has that. Don't. And this is the don't be unequally yoked thing, right? Like, don't. Yeah. That's Paul's version of it. How about this? So
that's a parable. You didn't finish it.
Do not lift a weight too heavy for you, or associate with one mightier than richer you. How can the clay pot associate with the iron kettle? The pot will strike against it and be smashed. A rich person does wrong and even adds insults. A poor person suffers wrong and must add apologies.
Oh man, that's so good.
A rich person will exploit you if you can be of use to him, but if you are in need, he will abandon you. What? Like, it's so true, guys.
Yeah.
Like if you're in a relationship where one person has all the power, okay, the person who has all the power, they can do the wrong thing, and then when they're busted on it, well, they just add insults on top of it. Mm-hmm. But when somebody on the other side, somebody that's not powerful, the person who's unequally, below them in the relationship, they are the one that suffers. Like, they're the victim that does wrong, and at the end, they're still the one like, I'm sorry, like. I mean, that's just a picture of reality. A lot to learn, guys. A lot to learn from Sirach. A lot to learn from the Wisdom of Solomon. These apocryphal books, and I'll tell you what, I just would commend them to you. They are fascinating, and they're, besides just being fascinating or like educational, they're just good reading. You'll find them inspiring. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So next week, we're going to do one last week. Next week. Okay. And
which one?
Okay, so what we're going to do next week is a little bit different. We're going to read, I don't know how they're labeled here. We're going to read Bel and the Dragon, okay? And we may do some of the Prayer of Azariah, and we may do some of Susanna. We're going to talk about some of these other, like, additional narratives, okay?
Yeah. These go on to books that have already been written, right? Because the chapter numbers Or like Bell and the Dragon just has chapter 14. So that means it's an extra part of something else.
Wow, you are figuring that out. And you have all the clues necessary to tell you.
Yeah,
especially because you have the prayer of Azariah. And think about this. Prayer of Azariah and the 3 Jews. Okay? And then
Meshach,
Bel and the
Shadrach,
dragon.
and Abednego.
Hey.
All right.
Hey.
Bell and the Dragon. I don't know. Bell.
So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. What all do you remember about their story?
They would not bow down to the statue, something like that. When the music played, it kind of gets mixed up with the Daniel thing, right?
Okay,
but then they got thrown into a fiery furnace.
So you're right. Okay, but do you remember the first? That's the fiery furnace part. Do you remember the first part of their story?
They are Daniel's friends.
Yes.
They only eat vegetables.
Yes.
They become more. I don't know. They look more healthy than the rest of the people in the court.
Among them, this is Daniel chapter 1. It talks about these Jews that have been taken captive. Among them were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The palace master gave them other names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar. Hananiah he called Shadrach. Mishael he called Meshach. And Azariah he called Abednego. So Azariah and the song of the prayer of Azariah. Okay, so Azariah is Abednego. Okay, so it's a prayer from him. And then Bel and the dragon. Bel is Belteshazzar. It's Daniel.
Got it.
Daniel. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Like these are what we sometimes call the Greek additions to the book of Daniel.
Okay.
Right. And they are fascinating.
And Susanna is just in there also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so we're gonna look at those. We're gonna pick up these additions to Daniel. Yeah.
When reading these, if one would like to read ahead, do they need to read like Daniel 1 and 2 and then go to Prayer of Azariah? Or is that like the background context? Or could you just pick it up and read it?
I'll tell you what, if you're going to read anything, I think that's familiar enough of a story. Yes, that would be useful. I think for most of us, that's the story of the
background. You know
yeah,
enough
you
of
probably
the
know
background,
enough
you
of
could
it.
just start reading it.
I think if I was going to read ahead, you could search this up and find it real easily. I can't believe I said search this up. That is the way my kids
search it up, y'all.
Search it up. That's the way my kids that's the way they talk about
Google.
Search
it up on Google.
Search it up. So if you're gonna search it up, look up Bel and the Dragon, and it's Bel like Bel.
Yeah, just Bel.
1 L. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bel and the Dragon, and it'll be an interesting read to you. Or you can look up the additions to Daniel. Okay. I think Greek additions to Daniel or something like that. And it'll probably bring those up as well.
But you should probably know enough about Daniel that you wouldn't have to read anything like specifically from the book to be able to jump in and just read those extras.
Yeah,
cool.
And they're not. Yes, that's right. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today. We'll see you next week. We're going to do that, and then and that'll be next week. That'll be what's the date? Today's the 11th, so it'll be the 18th. Happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day.
Kids had great Veterans Day celebrations.
Yeah.
We call it right before you guys got here. We called my dad and wished him happy. Dad was a veteran. My granddad was.
Cool.
So we spent a little time talking to granddad and celebrating that. But anyway, all right. So that's it for today. Next week we'll have that, and then the week after that, of course, will be the week of Thanksgiving. We will not have any kind of class that week.
Okay.
We'll come back in December with something totally new,
different. Cool.
Okay. All right. So thank you guys very, very much.
Yeah.
And we will catch you later. Okay. All right.
Night.